the new year. This is the first one of the year. We do have some guests today that will come up and speak in a little while. Next month we'll have the new CEO for Stoughton Health, somebody from the school district, hopefully Dr. Keyser, and then Sarah from the Chamber of Commerce. And then I'm trying to set up some sessions that would include our new state representatives and our new county board executive, and maybe get the sheriff back down here again. He's always fun to have around. So we're working on scheduling those dates, so we'll try to get them posted when we get them confirmed. So I'll run a few slides here. If you have any questions, as always, feel free to just shout them out, and I'll try to answer them as best as I can. So we're working on some developments. We had some aerial photos that were taken, I don't know, maybe a couple months ago from the police department. They have a drone which they use for investigations, which is really cool. They've been able to help track down people when they are on the run with their drones, and they were kind enough to take some shots for me so I could share them with you as some developments. So 51 West, you may know, is out going toward McFarland, and this would be on the right-hand side if you were to go from here. And this view here shows the second apartment building that's going up. I think the roof is fully complete now, so they're working on the inside. Yeah. They typically like to have these completed by July-ish, because that's the peak season for them for renting them out. So I think they're on schedule. The weather's been pretty cooperative here. We're starting to get a little frost now, but for the most part, they've been able to, crank these things out and fill them up. The reason I wanted to show this shot is, if you go on the west side here, there's been some development. There's some single-family homes up in this corner up here, and there's some condos that are being built here, and there's a whole bunch of duplexes that have gone up. And we're currently working with a developer. We have 2 lots here. It's like a 4-acre lot and a 2-acre lot, and we're working with JT Klein. They do workforce housing. So workforce housing is basically subsidized housing. There's 2 different types of WIDA, which is a state organization that they can get tax credits for. There's a 4% deal, which they can just apply for. They fill out an application, do some due diligence, and see if the numbers come out. And there's a 9%, which is a competitive statewide process. One of the challenges we have for the 9% for the developers is that usually you score about 230 points in order to be awarded the tax credits, and 5 points alone is for mass transit system, which we don't have here. So we've learned over the last several years that it's really not very likely that we would be able to secure a 9% WIDA tax credit deal. They also call it LIHTC, low income housing credit is another term they use for it. So JT Klein specializes. They've done about a dozen of these projects in Dane County, quite a few in Middleton, Monona, Madison, and they're looking at the 4-acre lot, and we're trying to get the numbers to come out. This is in a tax incremental financing district, which means that the new property taxes that are created by the apartments or homes that go up can be used to pay off debt, to put in the roads, sewer, water, electric, and also to provide developers incentive to help them close a financial gap. Because the challenge is on a LIHTC deal is the property values or the property taxes that are created for the tax increment is based on rental income. So if the rental income is subsidized, it's not as high as it would be for what we call a market rate, which is a full amount. So it creates a financial gap, and we sometimes use the tax incremental financing, or TIF as it's called, to help close that gap. So we've been going back and forth. We have our financial consultants do due diligence. They go back and forth with the developer. We're getting real close. I think Tuesday night we're going to find out whether or not this thing's going to move forward or not. And the reason it's really important is that Rosewood, I don't know if anybody here is familiar with Rosewood Apartments. That's been a LIHTC deal for 30 years. New ownership decided not to reapply for them, so the people that live there, I think there's 90 some, are losing their subsidy. So what we're trying to do is at least get something going to help replace that and maybe have a few extras. They're looking at 120 units on that lot. So we're going through the process now, so stay tuned. Tuesday night will be a really important night. And ultimately it's up to the city council to determine whether or not the gap from the recommendations we're gonna receive from our financial consultants and the number that we get from the developers, if there's a way to close that gap to make this deal happen.
Are these properties all rentals?
Yeah, they would be apartments. They would be similar to the apartments that are down there, except for they'd be subsidized.
They're not owned, they're not owned by anybody but the rental company. Okay.
Yeah, and they manage their own properties, and they have a really good reputation. I've toured their facilities. They do a nice job. They build them right. They use, they do a lot of the kind of the new flooring like this, and they do some, solid doors and good trim, because they don't want to have to constantly replace carpet when people come and go, so it's easier to clean. So they spend a little bit more money up front, knowing that they won't have to really do any extensive maintenance for at least 15 years. It's mostly just cleaning. So that's kind of their approach, and it seems to be working out really well for them, so we'll see how that goes.
Does that 4-acre parcel abut 51, or is it back in?
Here's 51, so it's right here.
Okay.
So Rutland Dunn is right here, which we're gonna have a roundabout put in here in 2026. There'll be a roundabout here, and then this is Oak Opening, which will take you all the way down through kind of behind Walmart and down in that area, and may eventually connect to Highway 138, which we'll probably be talking about at a future meeting here. So this is just another angle of the apartments. And we've also been working with Stoughton Trailers. This is their headquarters. You've probably seen they're building out there. And then we're in the process of working with them. They'll be at the Plan Commission Monday night to work on the infrastructure that they'll have to put in order to do phase 2. Phase 2, they're gonna put some apartments up. It's hard to see on here, but basically way back here, which will be behind the church and Sand Hill School. And then the trail that is currently over here will go all the way up to the school. So if you live in the apartments, you'll be able to walk the trail to go to school or to church. Yes, sir.
Does the Stoughton Utilities front all of the costs for the electric and water infrastructure through that entire area?
Typically what happens is the developer, in this case it's Stoughton Trailers, they will pay for the cost of all the utilities. So we have on the tax incremental financing, we do what we call a pay-go, and that means that the developer fronts all the costs, and then when the value is created through the new properties, that value pays back those costs to the developer, so they get reimbursed for it. So we have an agreement with them, so when the new property tax is created, the city's administrative costs, so it's our staff time, our attorney, our financial people, our engineers, we get reimbursed first, and whatever's left over reimburses the developer for the utilities or roads that they put in.
But the developer's actually laying out the money today to put cable and...
Yeah, because then the risk is on in their bank, so if they don't perform, and for some reason, let's say a developer goes bankrupt and the bank has to finish the project, we usually hold like a letter of credit. So the work gets done. That way the risk isn't on the city and the taxpayers won't end up footing the bill if the development goes south on us.
Yep.
So one of the things we're working on, and this is very preliminary, probably shouldn't even be showing it, but we're here and I'd like to give you guys a sneak preview since you give up a day to be with me, right?
Conspiracy theory.
Yes. So the Stoughton Trailers headquarters would be here, and if anybody knows the lay of the land here, you know it's extremely low and wet. So they have to put in required stormwater management ponds based on accommodating a 200-year flood. And that's approved by a Dane County organization organization called the Capital Area Regional Planning Commission, or CARPC as they're called. So the engineers put it together, our engineers review it, they take it to CARPC for approval. So you can see there's a lot of ponds. They're bringing in a lot of fill to elevate the land, and then the red represents the trails, the red dots. And then our initial concept is to have 4 soccer fields and some parking accommodations, and then we'll see where it goes from there. They would like to raise some money at some point and do something really special. When we put out our initial surveys, there's a lot of requests for some sort of an aquatic center. Those are many millions of dollars. So there would be some sort of a fundraising effort if we're gonna go in that direction. But nothing has been decided or committed to, other than we want them in phase 2 to do the grading that's required for the soccer fields, or they could be flag football or lacrosse or whatever, and get that planted, because it takes about 2 years for the grass to really take hold before we can use the fields. Same thing around the ponds. One of the things that we'll be doing is planting some native prairie grasses. So they'll be doing that as well, because again, it takes a couple of years for that to take effect. We met with them earlier in the week. We'd like to get those grasses planted sooner than later, otherwise the invasive species take over the fields before we even have a chance to, get some environmentally friendly products in there. Yes, sir.
Is there any plan for, I realize it's very preliminary, got that, but I see a pond and then I see fields and I see geese coming across there. And I know it's a city we lived in previous years, they had their soccer fields right next to where the geese like to hang out, and it was a disaster. So I don't know what you can do to kind of manage that, or something.
I think one of the things they do is they try to be strategic on the plantings that they put in there. That's one of the strategies. And then trying not to expose all the edges of the water, so it makes it difficult for the geese to get in there, because they're worried about predators being in the weeds. So there are some strategies. There's a hope that one of the ponds, they call it a lake, and it's going to be fairly deep, so we do have a few concerns about safety with the ponds, so that's another reason for the vegetation. But there is some hope that there might be some opportunities for fishing or ice skating or those sorts of things for recreational use. But there's a whole thing we have to go through with the DNR in order to make sure that, that can happen. But there's, specialists in the area of fishery and wildlife, so they're talking to those folks as well. But this is, like I said, very preliminary, but this is kind of the idea. The stakeholder groups, when we met them for our parks, this is considered a community park because it's so big. It's going to be 32 acres. The stakeholders basically said it's really difficult to manage our soccer programming because they're scattered all over the city. Whereas with baseball, for example, we have Racetrack Park where we have 4 diamonds. So the idea is to have kind of a centralized place for our fields, which makes it more parent friendly. And then if they want to have tournaments and bring people to our community, having at least 4 in one area and then using the other ones to supplement them is a good situation for the soccer association. So we've been talking to all the different stakeholders in order to put these preliminary plans together. Kettle Park West, this is out behind Walmart. This is an area where, at some of the previous meetings, I talked about these alley lots here. So what we have is this alley here is a private road, and then we'll have duplexes and single-family homes in these different rectangle areas there. And I believe that the builder for that one, which is D.R. Horton, I think they closed on them lots. There's going to be 72 units built out there. And they claim that from the day a homeowner signs the papers, they can have them built and moved in within 60 days, which is incredible. So we'll see how that goes next year, or this year now. And you can see some of the other homes that are under construction there. Those are Lennar homes. And they're another nationwide builder, and I believe they have about 8 lots left to develop. And right now, they can't develop them lots because of some agreements we have with the city for a road extension. So we're having conversations with the Forward Development Group, who's talking to Lennar, and then we're also talking to an adjacent neighbor, which may provide us a solution for a driveway relocation that is part of an agreement that we have. So that's something that you probably hear about in the next couple months as well. But there'll be a lot of homes out there. Magnolia Springs, this is south of Stoughton, this is where your area. Can we see your house on there?
I'm on Isham, so.
Oh, you're on Isham?
Yep, so behind those trees.
Yeah. So this is coming together pretty nicely, phase one. They have approvals, and I think they've already done some work for phase two. And this is Eldon Homes, they're a local builder. And you know, we're excited about these. So these homes here, believe it or not, the price range starts at about $360,000. The ones that I showed you in the alley lots, which are smaller lots, those would be probably 300 to 350 range. And those are considered entry-level homes right now. There's really no in-between right now. You either rent or you have at least a $300,000 or dollar house. There's nothing in the $200,000 price range because the builders would rather use their resources to either build apartments or build something more expensive. So that's one of the challenges that we face. This is Man Park. So we've been working on Man Park, and we mostly have completed this new road here, and it used to go straight across, and now it goes down and kind of circles around, and it's wider. That way the larger vehicles, trailers, semis can get in and out of there, the buses. And then, so they'll go around, and then they can come back and turn around, and more than likely they'll turn around and come back out the way they came in, or they could go through this way here when this is completed. This part here is where the softball diamond is. That'll be worked on before and after the fair next year. So we've been working around the fair, so we don't interrupt what they're trying to do there. But you can see we're gonna be, we created more green space because the grandstands were angled. We lifted them up, straighten them out, which creates more straight lines and flow, and then we're going to be adding a lot of parking. So it's coming along really nicely.
The aquatic center, I guess the proposed maybe someday dream aquatic center?
That's Troll Beach.
Oh, okay.
So, and at some point here in the next 5 years, we're going to be at a decision point with Troll Beach. The building is starting to show its age. And the question will be is, do we invest more money into that, or do we invest that money somewhere else, or make it different? So I think, if we had a blank checkbook, if somebody won the lottery, we'd probably build a new one somewhere. But maybe somebody's willing to donate some money, or multiple organizations might. We'll see what happens there. But yeah, that's the Troll Beach. So they made good progress this year. They got most of the infrastructure for the utilities redone, and they'll finish the parking lot probably after the fair next year. Yes, sir.
I'm new to the area, so it might sound very dumb, but do you, so I've come here from Oconomowoc, and there they have huge fights between all the townships that are right on the perimeter of the city and development of the city. Do you guys already have annexed to the city all these lands for these developments, or are some of these things in townships around you?
Everything that we're talking about today is annexed. So what typically happens in Dane County, for example, is we have a comprehensive plan that the state requires us to do every 10 years, and we have a survey as part of the component. And we're having a kickoff meeting. We're going to be updating our plan 2 years early, so beginning this year. It's not due until 2027. The reason we're doing it early is because so much has changed since the pandemic. The cost, the supply chains, land use, sustainability initiatives. So we're going to be starting that process very soon, and if you live in the city, you'll be getting more than likely a postcard or some sort of a communication to do a survey to help the city determine where the future boundary should be. That doesn't mean that's gonna happen tomorrow or next year. It could be 20, 50 years from now. And typically what happens is a family farm, they decide, you know what, next generation doesn't want to farm. They want to sell out. They contact the developer buys the land. The developer typically wants to annex it. They go through a process with the city. So we don't actively seek annexation,
Okay.
in spite of what some townships sometimes believe we do. It's not what we do. We have plenty to do without looking for work. So typically it comes to us, and if it's in our comprehensive plan, then we make a decision on whether or not we want, to accept the annexation. If it's not in our comprehensive plan, it's a little bit more complicated, because then the township can make an argument, well, it's not in your comp plan, you shouldn't be annexing. But the townships also have their own comprehensive plan, and often what happens is there's properties that are identified, they're in both. So now we have a conflict, and one of my struggles with the state is they gave us this unfunded mandate to do these plans, so we all do them, and we all spend money on the consultants, and last time it cost us $30,000, and then nobody does anything with it. So if there's a dispute, the state is like this, we're trying to get the county to be more involved, so then it comes down to our different associations lobbying against each other, and it's just a political nightmare is what it is. But we don't actively pursue it. But the farmers, a lot of them are tired, so when they do, they annex it. Now, what we've seen, you live in the town of Dunn and Dunkirk now, which is south of Stoughton, near this area here. This was in Dunkirk. Some of the townships are working with the farmers to do land preservation. So basically what they do is the farmers can sell the rights to have their land not developed ever, and they can get paid for that. And some of them are doing that because they want their family farm to be there as a legacy. Others may be doing it for other reasons, like trying to create borders to prevent the city from growing in those areas. So there's a lot of that has gone on as well to try to preserve some of the farmland in Dane County.
Thank you. Yeah, we have something over there called tall pines, which is that kind of land preservation thing.
And there's some municipalities like McFarland and the town of Dunn, they have boundary agreements. So they say, well, we'll let you develop here if you don't develop here, and they have the attorneys, draw it all up, and then they approve it.
So by 2030, what is the guesstimate of the population of Stoughton at that point?
I would say it's really hard to tell. I have a different presentation that I'm working on, but even though we've been building all these houses, the birth rate has been down, so we're not really increasing our population that much. Only, I think, 500 people in the last 10-year census is all we gained, even with all the homes that went up. So I'm gonna say a few thousand, maybe 3,000 to 5,000 people at the most, unless it continues to grow. I mean, staff-wise, we don't have much capacity to do any more than that anyway.
Isn't that the point, though, to grow tax base without raising too many new kids that will balloon the schools out?
Yeah, we've been in a situation here for 25 years where we didn't grow, and our student enrollment was down about, we're at about 2,700 students right now. At one point, just from the top of my memory, we had probably 3,600 students. So we actually have room in our schools right now. Most districts don't have that. And what happens is with the schools, and if you come next month when the superintendent is here, he can explain it to you better than I can, but part of their funding formula is based on a 3-year enrollment average.
Yeah.
So the good news for the school district right now is that in 2021, they work with UW Population Lab, and they do 4 different models for projecting out students. And at that point, they had projected between 2,500 and 2,600 students by this year, and we're at, I think, 2,750-ish. So even though our enrollment was down like 30 students from last year was up 10 students from the year before, they were projecting us to be down 7% or well over 100 students from where we're currently at right now. So what we're seeing is the households are smaller, so basically they're having less kids, and that's a nationwide thing. You know, they used to have 2 or 3 kids, now the average is 1 to 2. And then we also have an aging population in Wisconsin, and, you know, so we have to provide, you know, resources for that, and that's been one of our challenges, because as an aging population, you need more police, fire, and EMS calls, and the volunteerism is down. So we're hiring people for fire and EMS that we used to just have volunteers do it. We've hired 3 full-time people in the last year. In the past, we would have used that money to hire people to plow your roads and do other things, but emergency management obviously needs to be the priority. All right. Yeah, question?
Okay, I just wanted to say the question from the gentleman who moved from Oconomowoc. When I first joined the sustainability committee, I had rented a book from the library. There were only about 3 books at our library that were about sustainable development, and one of them was case studies from Europe. And something that's really common there that I think would be really awesome to have here is called the green belt around the city, where the farmers are directly growing to the people in a big way. There are some CSA farms around that people will purchase from, but just imagine, like, for that little zone between the city and the rural, instead of having it be like completely no development and then you have this like concentrated urban development. And I guess the idea is to have this transition zone where it's highly productive agricultural land that can serve the city where the highest concentration is. But then there's also this concept of agricultural neighborhoods that's starting to become more talked about. And there's one going in Madison. I talked to Mayor Swadley about this a little while ago, and I want to talk to Eldon Homes too, because I never heard back from them about this idea. But what if there was a development where it's a mix of a neighborhood and agricultural? And so I wanted to throw that idea out there because it's something that I'm really excited about, and with a lot of you all maybe grew up on farms. I'm not sure, like, there's a big transition from, like you said, family farms. My generation doesn't want to run a 100-acre corn farm, but there is this like kind of push towards having a mix of residential and agricultural that I'm really excited.
We used to have them, it was called putting in your own garden.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, so we don't have that anymore. But there's a lot of interest in that.
We have one
It's
community
not that hard,
garden.
right?
We have one community garden which serves about, 30 to 35 lots basically, but we'd like to have more, but we haven't had a demand yet. But maybe that'll change. You know, people are changing right now since the pandemic, so those types of things might come into play. There's some more pictures of Matt Park. That's the grandstand. You can kind of see how it is parallel with the road and also parallel with the ice rink that's down there. And right now, we just have the first coat of asphalt on there. We haven't put the second coat on yet. We'll do that in spring. That way it'll last longer. It won't get destroyed during the rest of the construction. Here's another angle which really shows, you know, kind of the drive area there. It was pretty, I don't know, it wasn't very orderly in the past. Let's put it in. It was kind of band-aided together, so what we're trying to do is put some organization to it. And I want to give a quick shout out to Bart. Does anybody know Bart at the Mann Center? So I was approached last Sunday night about a Stoughton resident whose children go to Abundant Life, and they were they weren't going to have school for a week because of the shooting, and they wanted to contact Bart down there, and I gave them some phone numbers, and they reached out to Bart. And Monday morning, it had a picture of his kids ice skating. So, really good job down there. They also have Adam Canvas down there. So it's a recycle program for a disabled person. So the Mann Center has been a great partner with the city. Here's what it looks like, kind of from the river view. It was amazing, you know, they jacked the thing up, craned it up, put it on basically wheels and turned it and put in new cement pillars and mounted it.
I was wondering, since you mentioned ice skating and the MANT and the connection there, I've emailed about having an open skate time for the community, and I'm wondering if you have any insight on that, because I've heard some people say that you can go if you know somebody there.
Yeah, I
But
tried to
it's
get my
not-
kids in too, and I couldn't.
There's not like a
They do
public-
have some scheduled sessions, but I don't know what they are off the top of my head.
I couldn't find
So
it.
basically,
Yeah.
you should be able to get a hold of Bart. I can get you his email
Okay.
or a phone number or something.
Yeah, that'd be great. I think that'd be it.
Because this
Well attended.
community where I came from in Michigan had a center like that for an ice rink, and there, it was like, people were taking their kids there for lessons all the time.
Yeah, and the ice rink is really, I mean, they're pretty busy there.
Yeah.
And Bart has a full-time career, and he just does this for the love of hockey, basically, on the side. Him and his whole family, any free time they have, they spend down there maintaining the building, doing the scheduling. It's kind of like a family operation. And so the Man Center hosts, we have 3 teams. We have the high school hockey team. We also host the Milton as their hockey program comes to Stoughton, so they practice and play their home games there. And then there's a girls co-op team that plays there as well. And I believe there's adult and then all sorts of youth leagues going on. So it's a pretty busy place. The ice time is really hard to come by. And, you know, part of it is this is just, you know, one person or one family trying to do this in between, you know, their careers and their family stuff. So I think that's part of it, is the capacity for them to just open it up. But, you know, they may be looking for volunteers that would help, you know, supervise is maybe a way. And they have their own board of directors as well.
Yeah, I think that's how they do that at the McFarland Ice Arena. They have a group of volunteers who comes and collects payments and.
All right, somebody asked me earlier about the River Park project. So we had a meeting yesterday with the DNR. There's probably about 20 of us at the meeting. And we're working through processes. So right now, currently, we have a deflector right here that was installed a couple of years ago. So you go through a permitting process and then they have to review it and approve it. And we're trying to put in a couple more features, another deflector here, and then a structure here. So right now, we have 2 permits right here, and the purpose of the meeting was just so everybody was clear on what the process, the timelines, what's required, because there's different codes that the DNR use in order to make a determination on these permits, and some of them fall under Chapter 30, which I don't know if it's water, and another one is Chapter 31, which is like fishing and other things. And I mean, it's really convoluted. They really need to go through and update their codes. But this is a first project like this in Wisconsin. So our goal right now is to get these 2 permits approved. There'll have to be a public hearing. We're hoping by sometime before April. And the reason we're working on these is because we'd like to install these before we put in the new trail at Man Park. So we don't put in a new trail and then we start driving over it to construct these. So we're trying to get the stars to align on that. Plus there's grant money that we've been awarded from the DNR, almost $1 million to help pay for some of this. And we don't want to have to lose it and reapply for it because it expires. So once we get through the downstream process, which also includes a trail which is already approved to go under the bridge, but this trail can't be constructed before these other things are either approved or we start constructing them. So there's 3 permits downstream, one's approved with conditions, and 2 that are in the pipeline right now. Once that's done, then we'll work on the upstream features, which is the dam itself, the reconstruction of the dam. And I don't really anticipate that until, I would say, if it gets submitted by the end of the year, that would be good, realistically. But who knows, maybe they'll surprise me. I mean, if we can get these other ones approved, then we know that all the engineering that we've done for the upstream will work. But if they say, well, you gotta adjust, you know, the design of this, then we may have to re-engineer some of the other things upstream. So they're kind of, even though they're separate, they kind of work with each other. So we met with them yesterday. We've been meeting about quarterly. We've made really good progress. They have a new secretary for our region, and she's been awesome to work with. Before that, quite honestly, they just didn't have a point person that could hold their staff accountable, and she's done a wonderful job, and we look forward to working with her. And Shelley Almas is her name, and she's also on the board that we just joined Green Tier Legacy Communities, and she's on the board there, so I saw her twice this week. So that was one of the initiatives that came out of the sustainability plan that Denala's been working on for the city. We're expecting things to continue to move forward at a much faster pace than, you know, they asked me yesterday, you know, well, when would you like to have a public hearing? I'm like, well, how many years would you like to go back? You know, because we've been working on this thing probably for at least 5 years. So we're making good progress. The purpose of this is to basically improve the water quality of the river by having better flow, put in some fish ladders, which will help the fishing, as well as when we do the dam reconstruction, the fish will be able to get up beyond the dam upstream for their spawning, which will help the fish upstream as well. And then the trail, and then the recreational use, the way we have it set up, we'd like to be able to do tubing and kayaking and those sorts of things. So for recreational use, people will enjoy the river more than they do today. That's the purpose of it.
I know there's a lot of controversy about with the water quality and everything for this project, and it seemed like one of the adaptations that was made the last time I attended the opposition's meeting was that there would be a inflatable, adjustable dam. Is that still part of it to address the water level concerns?
Yeah, there is water level concerns upstream because the dam is, I think it has a 7-foot drop. So under our reconstruction, it'll drop a couple feet. So, but the further you get upstream, the less the impact is. And so what they did is they designed, I think it's in this area here, or maybe it's down here, an inflatable membrane. Basically, it's like a bladder. So when the water level gets extremely low during drought conditions, pull back more water, so the impact wouldn't be as much. This is kind of our outline of what we need to get approved in order to move the project forward. And then this is the chart. So currently, this is kind of the summer conditions, and this is the winter conditions. In the winter, they drop the water level down, so when the ice freezes, it doesn't lift up on people's lawns. So in the summer, under normal conditions, which is 380 cubic feet per second is what it flows at the dam gauge, which is actually located at the 4th Street Dam. The water level will drop 2 feet. And as you get up to County Highway B, and that's where most of the controversy is coming from, it'll drop 0.3 feet, which is 3 to 4 inches under normal conditions. Now, if we have a heavy rain, the impact is less because you have more flow. If you have a drought, the impact is more. So as now mentioned, this inflatable gate we put in, instead of it dropping half a foot upstream during the drought condition, it would drop 0.4. So that's one of the features they put in, and then, you know, the DNR would have to permit that as well, and then we'd have to determine, we put it at 150 cubic feet per second, which is less than half of what normally flows. Because the river ebbs and flows based on precipitation, and it's really controlled by the lake levels in Madison. So there's a dam upstream at La Follette that they open or close based on what's happening in the Madison lakes, because they have their own permit levels that they have to be at there. So we don't really control any flow at our dam. it does hold back some water under drought conditions, so we're trying to recreate some of that with the gate. The features itself are rock boulders. That in itself will hold back some water as well. Not as much as the dam will, which is adjustable, but it will hold back some water. So this is kind of all the modeling that they do, the engineers do as they design the park. These numbers can be tweaked a little bit depending on what the final design looks like, but this is what we've modeled so far. And then we work with the county and then the DNR in order to make sure that they agree that our modeling is accurate. Stoughton Health, their addition is coming along quite nicely. I just thought this was an awesome picture that they got with the drone with the river in the background. They're expected to open up their new sections of their facilities here in the spring, so they seem to be on schedule. And they've raised enough money to pay for it, so good for them. And you'll hear about that more next month when the new CEO is here. We've been doing some work at the powerhouse, which is down on the river as well. At some point, we want to reuse this building. One of the things we learned yesterday was, when we met on site first, is that when they do the work on the river, they have to draw down the water in order to put in the features, that the water will be diverted underneath the powerhouse, and we have to make sure that if we were to sell it or lease it, we still have control of what we can and can't do with that building. Because if we sell it and the new owner, I don't think we can actually sell it. It's considered part of the dam, is what we learned yesterday. So I think we could lease it. We have somebody interested in buying it. So it's getting really complicated. But we did do some work recently in order to make it more suitable for use or sale. So this is what the inside looks like. And we had a team come in and remove all the asbestos because we want to get a structural engineer in there and make sure that the integrity of the building is protected. The roof, the walls, that sort of thing. So they basically got everything out of there. There used to be like dozens of bicycles stored in there. So if somebody's bicycle got stolen and the police department found it, that's where they stored them. But now it's empty. You can see here, this is where the turbine was mounted that generated electricity back in the day. Unfortunately, it's just not cost effective to generate electricity. The cost of getting it ready and what you would have to charge would be far more than you would currently pay through Stoughton Utilities. So this building has been cleaned out, and the next step is to have the structural engineers come in now that it's safe to go in there and do their thing, and then see what they say we need to do to make sure the building is stable. And then this is another picture, and you can't really see it very good on here, but when you're inside the building, you can actually see light through the roof. And I just threw this in here because I thought this was a cool picture somebody found. One of the things that we're grappling with is down in that area is there used to be a coal gasification plant. When they used to have industrial, they built wagons down in that area. So there is some contamination that we're dealing with on the land and in the water. So that was the other purpose of the meeting yesterday with the DNR, is we had the company that does our contamination testing and removal there, and they're trying to get a firm in there that very specialized the testing they need to do, and it sounds like they're gonna have to come down from Michigan. So they're trying to get that scheduled and understand exactly where the DNR is gonna require us to test it, and then make sure that everybody has the test areas and results from previous work we did, so we don't test an area that we already have data for. So that was another thing that we covered in our meeting yesterday. Depot Hill. So the depot building is down by the railroad tracks. Everybody familiar with that? So we have a foundation. I don't know if anybody knows the Schmetz. The Schmetz lived here back in the day. The family's actually given a 4-year scholarship to a high school student for the last 25 years. And their son approached us to do a legacy project And what they want to do is basically expand our arts district down to the railroad tracks. So if you go down there now, Able Contemporary is down there. They have their gallery, and then they have studios in the basement, which are full and have been since day one. And then you have Grand Inspire down there where you can make things and make art or tables or woodworking projects. What they would like to do is acquire some buildings and expand what we already have down there. It's a big foundation. They want to put an art gallery down there. They would like to do some more studios because there's a need, and then eventually they like to be able to do housing, that specialized housing for the artists to live down in that area. So we think this is a really exciting project. One of the buildings that they identified is a building that the city owns, the Depot building, and currently it's housed by the Chamber of Commerce. And then the Historical Society has a museum in the back. It's artifacts. There's some old wooden wagons and some, there's a sleigh, there's some skis, a canoe, some tools, a bunch of artifacts in there. So one of the conversations that we're having right now is, you know, if they were to acquire the building, where's the chamber going to go and where the artifacts going to go? So, you know, the chamber is pretty flexible. They'll go wherever. The Historical Society is really concerned. They've been there for 35 years. Originally, the building was purchased by the city for $10,700 in 1988. And the Historical Society raised over $20,000 and put in over 350 volunteer hours in order to basically save the building. It was starting to be in ruins. So we're having conversations with them. And in the middle of the conversation yesterday, we received an offer to purchase for the building. So the city council is going to be looking at that next week, and we'll see what they want to do. But you know, I view it as a great opportunity. But I'm also concerned about the Historical Society and where they might put their artifacts. And at this point, they haven't really embraced the idea of moving them, which is understandable. So we're hopefully going to be able to work through that with them and come up with a better situation. I also think it's an opportunity for them because they need more space. The city's going to have some money if we sell the building. The foundation has more money than the city does. And so we're working closely to see if we can come to a resolution. Go ahead.
I know the Historical Society is pretty upset about it, and I'm just wondering if there's any way to put some kind of requirement in that they don't change the look of the original depot and to the other buildings or something like that. So if they do purchase and revise what it's used for, at least can we continue to have it look like the depot? And
sure, that's a good question. So Main Street is a historic district, and the depot building itself is not only listed on the National Register of Historic Places, it's also a local landmark, which means that any work to the exterior of the building has to be consistent with historical preservation standards that are outlined in our ordinances. So the exterior of the building, any work they would have to do on that would have to be approved by our Landmarks Commission. The inside of the building, they can do whatever they want. And I know the Historical Society is concerned about the inside features of the building, but quite honestly, you know, the local landmarks and the historical preservation and even the tax credits that you would use to potentially pay for some of that doesn't require you to do anything on the inside. You can do whatever you want. They're mostly worried, they're exclusively worried about the outside of the building, you know, the windows, the doors, the walls, the roof. So, you know, I think that there's a pretty good likelihood that they'll invest more money into the building than the city would.
yeah.
So I can tell you that in the last 10 years, the city's invested $87,700 into the building. Now that includes the $4,000 annual utility cost, and we collect no rent. And I have an estimate for a paint job from about 5 years ago for the exterior for $32,000. And we're getting to a decision point on what, and that number's probably gone up. a decision point on whether or not the city should pay to have it painted in the spring. I struggle with whether or not that's good use of tax dollars. I really do, but I also want to make sure that the Historical Society has a building that's suitable to their needs. So those are the conversations we're having right now. Those are difficult conversations. It's similar to the conversations we had when we moved City Hall from the Opera House to our current building. We've been in City Hall since 1901. We saw an opportunity for a building that was donated. We went for it, we moved, it's worked out great. It's similar to the situation here. We had tenants that were in this building for over 30 years, and we wanted to expand the senior center, and we were met with resistance. And we worked with them, and I actually helped find some of them, personally helped find them new locations. And at the time, there was pandemic available, so several of them were able to get $10,000 from the state of Wisconsin to offset their relocation costs. So I really care. I don't want businesses or organizations to go away. I want to support them, but it's getting really difficult for those organizations as well, because as I mentioned earlier, the volunteerism is down. So we have to have a long-term sustainable plan for organizations like the Historical Society. Some of our civic groups, I was told earlier this week that the Kiwanis is disbanded because they couldn't get enough volunteers. So those are things that we also have to look at, is not necessarily today, but what's this going to look like in 10 or 20 years, and how can we position our nonprofits and our organizations to be able to thrive and continue to serve our community.
Thank you.
Sure, thanks for the question. The other thing I didn't mention when we were talking about the powerhouse is I mentioned that there was interest in the building. So we also have an offer that came in this week on the building that houses Stoughton Utilities and EMS and the food pantry. So this is the second offer from this group. The first offer was just, quite honestly, too low. We've had appraisals done on the building, so we know what they're worth, including the depot. The depot offer that we received was actually at the appraisal price, $170,000. The utilities offer on the building that we received a couple days ago, I haven't seen it yet, the attorney has it, but we'll be discussing that Tuesday night as well. And there's a distillery that would like to do the production in Stoughton, so to create jobs, be on the river. It'll take a building right now that is tax exempt, and it'll put it on the tax roll. And there's these crazy Public Service Commission rules that say that we can't charge our utilities market rate for the rent for using a city building. And it has to do with like depreciation and all this financial jargon. But the bottom line is utilities has been wanting to have their own building anyway. So we're going to be working with that group to see whether or not we can come to terms on the conditions of the offer, and then a relocation plan potentially for Stoughton Utilities, and what that might look like. And initial discussions said that the food pantry could stay there indefinitely as their way of giving back to the community, and that the EMS and the offices of the utilities would have basically 2 years of relocate. That was what was in the first offer. I'm not sure what it looks like in the second offer. It's the same, or if the dates have changed. Utilities in the back, they have garages, so they have storage, they have large vehicles, that sort of thing. And the question is where are we going to put their stuff until potentially they get a new building built? So we're looking at that as well. But we think that's a great opportunity for another reason for people to come to Stoughton, just like the Arts District, just like the Opera House, just like Larissa. We want people to have a reason to come to Stoughton and spend the entire day here and hopefully spend their money at our businesses. So that's going on as well. So like I said, it's been busy, but it's been a different kind of busy. So as I mentioned earlier, we had sustainability plan. Danelle, who's here, is going to speak shortly, is on the committee for that. And we've been working with Dane County. Mike, our county representative supervisor, is in the back. And the county is working on initiatives, and we've been partnering with them. So they're looking to do some EV charging stations, so we'll see whether or not we get some additional ones in Stoughton. We currently have a 2-unit at City Hall. Stoughton Health has several units there, and people come to your communities if they know they can charge their car here and they spend money while they're here. So from an economic development perspective, even though you're basically giving them free electricity for their car, it's a way to get people to come to your community and shop in your downtowns. This is our press release for joining the DNR's Green Tier program. So we had to go through and do a resolution at City Council, which was approved. And also, we have a plan that the City Council approved that the committee had been working on for about 3 years. And we're underway. We had our kickoff meeting last week, and we're in the process of going through our sustainability plan and prioritizing and assigning responsibilities in order to reach our goals. Snow emergency notification. You can sign up to get notified if there's a snow emergency. When there is, you have to do the alternate side parking on those events. So if you haven't signed up, you might want to do that. Otherwise, you can hear it on multiple radio stations and TV stations or on our social media and website. We have a new business. This one is down not too far from the middle school, around the corner there. It's another tattoo place. I didn't even know they were down there. I drove by there one day and I looked, and it's like, oh, another tattoo place. So, you know, these things go in cycles. You know, it's like tattoos, it's like vape shops, and Subway, and
Yeah, we're really good at alcohol promotion too.
so.
Sounds.
But, you know, I went on their social media, they do some interesting things there. I think they do tattoos and piercings, so if you go there, you don't have to get a tattoo, you can get a piercing. There you go.
I don't violate my body.
We've been getting some questions about the VITA program. That's a volunteer income tax preparation program that we have hosted at the senior center for several years. We don't have all the information yet. They're having difficulty getting volunteers, especially somebody to lead the organization here locally. So I've been told that it's going to happen, but we don't have all the details yet. Is anybody taking advantage of that? I did last year. Last year was the first year I didn't have a business, so I could file an easy form. So I just had them do it. I dropped it off on a Saturday. They called me in the afternoon. It was done. It was done for free. So it's available to anybody, you know, that basically does an easier form. If you're a business, you're gonna have to go to an accountant. I did that for 19 years and paid a lot of money to do that. All right, any questions before I bring up our guests? All right, thank you very much. I'll turn it over to Danelle. She can introduce herself and her team and what they're working on.
Thank you, Mayor Swadley. And as Mayor Swadley mentioned, I am on the Sustainability Committee, and it's been a passion of mine. But I'm not here to talk about sustainability, environmental sustainability, more so the human dimensions aspect of sustainability, and that's supporting our community's youth. As I'm wearing my Eyes of Hope director's hat. And Eyes of Hope is celebrating 17 years this year. Could you raise your hand if you've heard of Eyes of Hope? That was what I was expecting. So this year is our year to really get out in the community and let people know what we've been up to. One thing, so I moved to Stoughton in 2020 during the pandemic, and I learned right away how amazing this community is, the grassroots initiatives. The fact that I can have the mayor's cell phone number in my cell phone is like pretty incredible. I've never had that experience in my life, any other community I've lived in. The fact that I know an artist who can make a sign for the children's garden and go and sit with him at coffee with the mayor is pretty incredible, and I see some other familiar faces in the room. And so I do see the grassroots volunteer spirit being really abundant here in Stoughton, and I'm really appreciating that. And so I'm here today, primarily I will be introducing Holly and Ken. Holly is our program director for a program called Hope Tutors, and they're going to talk about, is anyone here because of the Hope Tutors info session? Thank you for coming. So we're primarily going to be talking about Hope Tutors today. Ken is our star tutor. How many students are you tutoring right now, Ken?
8.
Don't
8
let him
students.
scare you.
You
Well,
don't have
I'll
to
give you the
tutor.
story as to why I got to 8.
Yeah.
It's not scary, it's a good story.
Yeah, Holly will talk about how you can set your own boundaries for tutoring, and you don't have to take on 8 students if you don't want to. But anyways, I'm getting ahead of myself. I just wanted to give a little overview of Eyes of Hope. We have currently 4 programs that we're running, and in addition to Hope Tutors, the other program that y'all might be interested in volunteering to help out with is our Hope Grows program. That is a children's garden that was started last year, and as I referenced, Bill painted an amazing sign for us. It's down at Lowell Park at the community garden space. We have a 1,200 square foot perennial fruit and vegetable garden for children to come and learn how to grow their own food. As you mentioned, like, it used to be really common, but luckily I grew up with a dad who grew tomatoes and basil, and that was about it. But so I got a little bit of a green thumb growing up, but most kids do not grow up knowing anything about where their food comes from, besides it comes from the grocery store. But so that there's a lot of great benefits that to growing food with kids, including that connection with nature and also just increasing nutrition. We all know the problems that our youth are facing with diabetes and lack of movement. Just getting outside and moving their bodies is something, it's becoming something that's less and less. And then, so that's a program we're looking for volunteers for. And if you're someone who's like, maybe you don't want to be out in the garden with the kids, there's also other ways to support. So if you're interested in that program, the best way to connect with all of Eyes of Hope programs is through email and website. And you can talk with me or Holly about how to connect after. I do have a meeting with Greg from the youth center to talk about our programs at 11:30, so I'm going to have to head out. But I'm going to leave this brochure. My email's on the back if you want to reach out to me directly. Then our other program, we have an after-school program. Oh, by the way, all of our programs are totally free for participants, and that is due to our great, again, the community support through the Stoughton Area Community Foundation, the Rotary, Department of Health. We've gotten some really great grants from the community that we're grateful for. But yeah, so Hope Explorers Club is our after-school program that is out in north of Stoughton at the Bayview Heights mobile home community. We have a free after-school program it's much needed for that community that's pretty isolated from the town here. And then finally, our Hope Resilience Club is a partnership with Suzanne Larson, who started Main Street Yoga recently. She is offering programs for mental health well-being through yoga therapy, and we are going to be starting a program at the high school just in a couple weeks, where we're going to be she'll be going to the students right in the high school and offering her services there. So I'm going to turn it over to Holly now to explain about Hope Tutors a little bit and how you may get involved with that program. Thanks.
Hi, everybody. I'm going to talk a little bit about Hope Tutors, and then I'm going to hand it over to Ken, who is one of our Hope Tutors. Feel free to raise your hand anytime if you have questions. So I moved to Stoughton in 2014, which I know that makes me a very new Stoughton person, but feels like a long time to me. And I came from a community. I'm a teacher. I have a bachelor's in education, elementary education. I have 1 master's in English as a second language, and I have a 2nd master's in deaf and hard of hearing. So I've worked in both general and special education for 20 years. About 5 or 6 years ago, I taught a Spanish class here at the Senior Center, some of you may have remembered hearing about, and I did a couple talks to help people at the Senior Center understand how to help their grandkids with math. Helping people help their kids with school and getting more kids access to support, academic support, is a passion of mine that has transcended my entire 20-year career. So I've been both a public educator, I've been a special educator. Some of you may know me, I was on the board, the school board here for 2 terms. I did resign from the board recently because my children had some health concerns I needed to deal with, and I really wanted to put my time into Hope Tutors because that's a very practical way that I'm seeing the students in this community get help. So the way Hope Tutors works, I came from a community where there was a volunteer tutor list that you could call the middle school guidance counselor. If your kid was struggling with something, like getting their homework done or doing math, you could call the middle school guidance counselor and she would just send you a list of teachers who would be willing to help in their off times. And those teachers would put on there how much they would charge. So it wasn't volunteers, but it was a list. So when I moved to Stoughton, I hadn't gotten my Wisconsin teaching license yet. I was kind of in a downtime, and I called the school district and I said, hey, can you put me on your tutor list? And they said, our what? And I said, oh, you don't have a tutor list? Like, what if kids need help? Well, we don't have that. I then put up a flyer at the co-op at the time. I was a single mom, so I started a tutoring business. I wasn't ready to go back into the classroom, and within 6 months I had 15 students. And again, as a single mom, this was my business, right? But all along I was thinking, I don't only want to help the kids whose parents can afford a tutor, because tutoring is expensive. I don't know if any of you have ever had to secure a tutor for your child, but we're talking like $70 an hour, easy, $70 to $75 an hour. I know many families that can't afford that. And tutoring is the single biggest game changer. We know that from many studies. Kids don't need a ton of help, they just need a little bit of help, okay? They just need somebody to check in with. And as the mother of 2 teenagers, I have a senior and a sophomore. They don't want anything to do with me, and like I told you all the education I have, right? Like I can teach them anything they want me to teach them. They want me to teach them nothing. So it became clear early on that the best use of my time, the time that I have to volunteer, is to figure out how to empower more people to show up for our kids. Because, and this was before the pandemic. Now post-pandemic, it's even more of a struggle. Teachers are struggling, kids are struggling, and more so than a vast wealth of academic knowledge in any one subject. So Ken is a retired engineer and has a lot of math ability and can help kids, but that's not necessarily a prerequisite. Really what kids are looking for is just somebody to sit down and look at it and show them what it looks like to learn something without having their whole nervous system be overwhelmed, you know? Let's figure this out together. That's what they're looking for. They're looking for some consistency. They're looking for somebody who's not a mom, who's not a dad. They're looking for somebody to just help them understand. And I think as I've talked to people, some of the biggest reasons that people have given for being hesitant to even try something like this is, well, I don't know anything about what kids are learning today. But all of you were kids at one point, and all of you know what it felt like at some point not to know what you needed to do or what to try, and that's really all you have to bring to this experience. So that's what we're doing with Hope Tutors. We have 12 tutors, 12 adult tutors. Right now we have a meeting with the high school this afternoon to try and figure out how we can develop a high school tutoring program to help some of our younger kids, because when high school kids tutor younger kids, it helps everybody. So we're really working to build this from the ground up. And Ken has 8 students, but we have tutors who have just one student that they're working with. Every once in a while, that family can call them and say, hey, can you sit down on Wednesday and look at their reading, or help them get their homework folder organized, or whatever it is. So we have, you can go anywhere. It's really built around what you're willing to do. If your life circumstances change and you can't take a student at all, you just get a hold of me and I find another tutor for them. So it's really flexible. You fill out a form that says, I like elementary kids, I like middle school kids, I like high school kids, I like these subjects. All of it, it's really tailored to you. We have a training here on Wednesday at 1:30. If you want to come and learn more information, I do an actual training where we talk about what that might look like, what kinds of things kids are looking for, give you some information about how to work with kids. How many of you have grandkids like in school age? Yeah? Okay, great. So kids are weird. So we'll talk a little bit about the weirdness of kids these days, but really they're still kids. They're still looking for help, and when you get them one-on-one, you get a different experience than, you know, what you see out in the world. They're still just kids. They're just trying to do the best they can with what they have in a world that's, you know, pretty overwhelming sometimes. So I'm gonna turn it over to Ken, but I'm gonna be around to answer any questions. If you're at all interested at all and you don't have anything to do on Wednesday at 1:30, just come sit with us. We'll talk about it. It'll be very short. Then we have you fill out a background check form.
1 p.m.
1 p.m., sorry. A background check form, and then you fill out a Google form that just tells me what you would be interested in, and when I get somebody that I think might be a good match, I reach out to you first. Hey, would you be interested in taking this fourth grader who, you know, whose parents are at their wits' end and need a reading buddy? Yes? Okay, I'll connect you. And that's how it goes. So I'm gonna pass it over to Ken, who can talk a little bit about how this has been for him, but I'll be around for questions if you have any. Was it off the whole time?
Yeah, it was
Oh, I'm sorry, Ken.
Sorry. Couldn't hear you.
Did you hear me? I had my teacher voice on.
Yeah, it was good.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
You're fine. I'll put this on. So, yeah, my name is Ken. I, unlike the others here, I was born and raised in Stoughton. As a matter of fact, I was born in the hospital that we saw the pictures of before. And got a little bit of gray hair, like many of you, as you see, so I've got a different perspective on some of this stuff. But growing up in Stoughton with my mom, who was on the school board, she was president of the school board for quite a number of years back in the day. I think she just mainly wanted to see me graduate, which was, you know, much appreciated. But I had so many fortunate things as growing up, and I think so much about, as I'm teaching and working with these middle school kids in particular. I have high school kids, I have middle school kids, and I have one grade school girl who's a trip. Anyway, when I got to 7th grade, I mean, I had no clue, you know. I mean, I just had nothing going on. I was kind of very much a mediocre student, and I was happy to just kind of be able to get through the day, and I think that's true of a lot of these middle school kids. And in 8th grade, I got a couple of really good teachers, and they made all the difference, and it allowed me to be highly successful in high school, to go on to college, get a couple of college, well, actually three college degrees. I'm one of those overeducated people. And eventually I figured out what I wanted to do with my life, and then I decided to retire. So anyway.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, so for me, this was definitely a way to give back. And as Holly pointed out, I mean, there's a big need out there. And really, you know, I still think about when we first started this thing, and we were in the Methodist church, and it was kind of a drop-in thing, and we occasionally get some people, you know, kids coming in, but it's at night, and you know, it's tough to, you just got everybody home, and now you got to get back out and go down to the thing. So anyway, and this parent came in with a child and said she needs some math help. And I had just started. I mean, I had totally green. I hadn't had any of the training. I just kind of showed up, and Holly looks at me, or it wasn't Holly, it was yeah, Lauren. That she just kind of looked at me and said, "Would you be interested in trying to tutor this person?" I said, "You know, what's the worst that can happen?" So we just kind of dove straight into it. And I think that's the lesson here, is that it's really not something where you have to be highly educated or in math or whatever. It's understanding and being willing to work with the kids. And I started with one person, and I just got so much myself out of it. You know, when you have a kid, I mean, I had this grade school girl. She was struggling, smart kid. I mean, just really. I mean, you probably have grandkids or no kids that are like that. Really smart, but she just was struggling with school, and she hated math. And her mom said, well, you know, let's get you set up. And they tried different tutors and whatever. And I've been working with her for, goodness, almost a year now. And now math is her favorite subject. At least that's what she said. Maybe she just says it for me. I don't know. You
That's
know,
very common.
she's a fourth grader, so, you know, what can I say? But I mean, it's that kind of feedback that really gets you excited and happy to be doing this kind of stuff. Yes, sir.
When you work with a kid, is it a weekly thing? Do they call you as needed, weekly, daily, monthly?
It really depends on the person that you're working with, the child.
And also your schedule.
Yeah, and your schedule too. For example, I had this boy who was in 7th grade going into 8th grade, and he was just, and he still is, he's challenged. He's got some real challenges. Good kid, I mean, just a really super nice kid, but he just has some challenges. And I chose to work with him a couple times a week just to kind of get him up to speed. You know, it's like, dude, we're gonna do this. We can do this. And he hit 8th grade running, and he was able to kind of, you know, and he's had his ups and downs and whatever. But it's really up to the tutor, the parent, and the student to kind of talk through.
Does the school or somebody else appraise what this child needs, or?
It's,
Typically, the parents tell us, here's what we think they need.
Yeah.
Ken has been in contact with teachers, and I have like, sometimes teachers will reach out to me and say, here's what I think would be really helpful. You've had that experience too,
Yeah,
right? I
and-
mean, some of them will do that.
Yeah,
I know
so-
my grandchildren, I know that there's sometimes what the teacher and the parent know different. than-
Right.
Yeah.
They're
And it's-
different.
Yeah.
And what I've found, and like I said, I've been doing this for a while now, and I have no training in teaching. I mean, I raised 2 boys and did my best to teach them, and they'll give you different opinions on how well I did that. But you know, it's most of it comes from the students. They will come, you know, I say, well, just bring your homework, okay? And we'll you know, it's like if you were working with your own kids or your own grandkids or whatever. Hey, show me what you're working on. What's going on? You know, and get that conversation going. And a lot of times they'll just kind of go, you know, I don't understand exponents. I don't understand how this works, you know. And it's like, well, just let's step back and kind of work our way through it. And some of the challenges have been the language that comes in, and you see the homework assignment, and there'll be a couple of words on there. It's like, okay, I understand the English language, but I don't understand really what that set of words means. And I know what math is, and I know how to solve these problems, but how do I get so that this student can do what they're supposed to do for school? And and I have reached out to the teachers in that particular area, and they said, well, here's a textbook, you know, you can go look up the terms. I mean, at my request, I said, you know, and that's just me. That's what I enjoy.
Just spread the word. If you're not interested for yourself, please do spread the word. We have a Eyes of Hope Facebook page. You can get all the information there. But reach out to the Senior Center can find me, or I can leave my number. But just spread the word, because it's something that we're growing, small but sure. And this is our way of giving back to the community.